Welcome to our podcast. This is Friends on Fire.
I'm Mike. I'm a lifelong devotee of financial independence. I even wrote a book about it.
And I'm Maggie, a newer convert, but just as passionate, especially on the intersection of minimalism and financial independence.
We're one and the same.
We are two like-minded friends who believe that talking about money with your friends and family opens the door to financial well-being.
The Friends on Fire podcast is about dispelling myths, building financial acumen, and sharing your financial independence journey with the people you care about.
This is Friends on Fire. Hi, Maggie.
Hey, Mike.
Hi, Greg.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Greg.
Hey, Maggie.
I am super excited to be talking to you today because we are going to do something a little bit different. Today, I am fully in the driver's seat. Maggie, you typically like to take the lead on our interviews, whether I choose to accept it or not. And today, it is all me. I have not shared the questions with you. Mm-hmm. You are going to respond to what I ask you. I feel this shift in power in the podcast.
This makes me very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I can see it in your face. Normally, you kind of have like a podcast glow. Today, you don't.
Yeah, power shift. I'm relinquishing all control, and we're excited. We're here to answer your questions and talk about whatever you want to talk about. Stock market, whatever you'd like.
So the purpose of today's episode is to do a recap of both of your final weeks at work and then to hear some thoughts about your first few days of quote unquote retirement.
Yeah. That's the purpose.
Thanks, Maggie. All right, let's start with a little history. When did you two first give your notices at work?
I gave my notice back in September of 2021. So I gave, I think, close to 9 months notice. Mm-hmm. It was a little too early in hindsight, but unrelated. Well, not unrelated.
No, I think very related.
Yeah,
why would you say that it was too much notice?
I don't think anyone knew what to do with that information at the time. They were sad, but logistically, it's like nothing happened. It was like, okay, well, let's pick this back up as it gets closer, right? And so it just created an unnecessarily long, I was doing it trying to think well, once I made this decision, I want to let people know. I want to let, if they're planning on reorging things, I want them to have as much headway as I can give so that they have this information and can do what they need with it. Because there's always some changes being considered or, things going on at companies. And so I wanted to give a lot of notice, but yeah, I don't even know how to describe it. It was just too much. It's hard to get into the specifics of why. Maybe Greg will do a better job explaining how much
Greg,
is too much.
How much notice did you give at work?
I gave kind of informal notice in November and then gave formal notice in January. And
formal notice, you mean you wrote your resignation letter?
Yeah,
but they were very clear that you were doing that. I mean, it was formal in the sense that when you said it in November, it was clear and final and not something that you might do.
I would like to hear from Greg, please, Maggie. You don't need to help him answer his questions. He is an adult. Okay. He can share.
I'm going to sit back.
All right.
Yeah. And in November, I said that it would be sometime in the, spring or summer, but I didn't give a specific date at that time. Mm-hmm. But I agree with Maggie. I don't know if I would say too much notice, but it was definitely, it made for a long wind down. And I think in my company as well, despite that huge amount of notice, my position was not backfilled by the time I left. And things that you kind of hope when you give that much notice that you have a replacement to sort of train and to kind of leave things in a really good place. And just due to a number of factors that didn't happen. But
well, it's interesting to hear both of you kind of share the same story from two very different companies. And I think it supports kind of a theme that we talk about on the show here, where we talk about it in regards to spending and trying to impress people. But I think it's safe to say that everybody is so concerned with what's going on in their own lives that they can't really wrap their heads around big changes going on in other people's lives until it is like at the last moment and they have a specific, action item they need to complete.
Yeah, I mean, it's some version of procrastination, right? Like we long-term plan for many things in life and in work, but when it really comes down to it, all of a sudden, all the logistics that need to happen are happening at the very last minute. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing that, in my situation and things that I'm driving and in things that, the company needs to do to wrap things up.
Yeah. So when you first gave these notices, what was the immediate reaction from the people you told? Because I think it was a relatively small group that initially knew, probably for a period of months. What was that like?
It's a good question. It feels like such a long time ago now. It was, first off, it was something that I had been dreading doing because it was like a very nervous discussion for me, right? This was such a big life change. There was a lot of anxiety that I had around finally saying it and kind of finalizing it verbally to other people. And so when you say, what was it like? One thing was, it was like a lot of things you have anxiety around. Once you actually just say it, you're like, 2 minutes later it was done, right? I've let the words out and it's now real and it's happened. And so it was, a lot of kind of buildup of anxiety for no reason. And so, or not to say for no reason, but it very quickly went away. I think the response, my general response from, the couple people I told early on were they don't want me to leave, right? Sad that this is, kind of happening, and a lot of like compliments of, like we really appreciate you and would want you to stay. But there wasn't an actual, like, I think because of I wasn't saying I'm going to another company. There was nothing to like negotiate. I was like, or convince me of, right? I was saying, look, I'm leaving for myself and to spend time with my kids and my family. And it was like, nobody could argue with that. And nobody was going to try to convince me. And there were even words shared like that of like, if there were other scenarios, like we'd try to convince you of something, but we're not going to, which I appreciate. And so, I think the other thing I would say though, is the other response was, I don't think it was fully accepted and believed at the time. Believed may be the wrong word, but accepted. Like there were many conversations after where references were made to like, if you leave, and I was like, no, it's like a when, and, and so I think, I think that was kind of my biggest observations is, it was just, I stressed a lot about it, and then actually getting the words out felt really good. And there wasn't, because it was such a long time period, I don't think there was a full acceptance of it at the time.
Yeah. Greg, something similar?
Yeah, no, mine actually, I think, was met with a great amount of relief and a reaction of, this is going to make things easier for all of us, actually. So no, I'm kidding. I think it was probably similar. I mean, supportive. And, it's one thing I will say is I work for a great company where, it was a mix of, we're really sorry you're leaving, but really excited for you. And even a certain senior leader at the company I work for who I've enjoyed working for, but I just kind of thought, of all people, he's going to, he's just not going to understand, or he's going to, I don't know. I just expected a tougher reaction. He called me personally and just said, I'm really proud of you. It just takes a lot of bravery to do something like this. And just really had some very kind and reassuring words. And it was really nice. So I think people's reactions were supportive. It was so far in advance that I don't think people knew really what to do with it, though. There was the pleasantries of, we're really excited for you, but back to business as usual. And then that sort of sustained itself until 2 or 3 weeks before I was leaving. And then it was like, oh, what are we going to do? And even myself, I kind of fell into that. I kept saying, I'm going to make this good transition plan, but you're still doing the day to day. And so all of a sudden it was this point where I thought, oh gosh, I've really got to put together this transition plan. And it was just an interesting sort of experience to go through. It was this kind of feeling of elation at first. And then this kind of, but there's 6 months and that'll take forever. And then it sort of dragged on, but it also went by quickly.
So one of the things that, Maggie, I noticed about you, and probably because I talk to you all the time, and Greg, I haven't talked to you every day since this happened, but it seems to me as though, like, from the time you announced that you were leaving, Greg, you were pretty chill about the whole thing. And I think, Maggie, you continued with a lot of the stress and at times doubt about the decision. And I'm not sure, it slowly got better, but yeah. I'm interested to hear how, like, you both felt over this fairly lengthy time period.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said is accurate. I frequently will tell you, Mike, that Greg's handling a lot of things better than I am. And, you know, I think one important detail as I kind of answer that, I'm not actually sure what the question was, but is I think for both of us, there was a timeline where we told a couple people, when we were talking about that September, November timeline for both of us, that was a couple people at our companies, right? I told 2 people. Greg told 1 person, I believe, his boss. And I told my boss and our kind of head of HR. And then we didn't tell anyone else. And so it was still a secret, right? Like, the people didn't know, my team didn't know. And so that was a difficult time for me, honestly, because I don't like secrets. And I don't not when we're talking about something, we're planning for something in the future and having work discussions. I don't like leaving out a key piece of information, which is like, hey, I'm not going to be here then. So think about what that will look like without me. And I had brought in somebody new, a new director on my team that was my directs were going to report to her after I left. And it's like, I couldn't tell them yet. And so it was a little bit of an awkward time where, you know, it wasn't until a couple months ago that we kind of went, quote, public and told everybody that we were leaving. And that's where it was like a whole nother shift where we actually could like openly talk about it with people and people knew what we were doing. And so again, I forgot the question, but I just felt like that was an important piece in our timeline to share.
I forgot the question too, but Greg, feel free to say whatever you'd like in response.
Let's see, that's a broad opening, but I think you were basically just talking about our reactions and feelings during that time. And yeah, I mean, I think I've been pretty chill about it, so to speak. I certainly noticed that for me, once I told people at my company and I communicated it more broadly, my stress level around work went down. And I think some of that is just the way I'm wired. I'm very overly affected by, you know, what I think people perceive of my performance or how I'm doing. And I think once it was public, I took that pressure off of myself of like, you know, I still wanted to do a really good job in closing out things, but it was just, I wasn't overly analyzing every conversation I had at work and all these ridiculous things that you do that you realize you shouldn't do anyway. But so for me, I've kind of enjoyed the last few months of work in that I've still been very focused, but it's like how I wish I could be all the time at work, in that I was just worried about getting stuff done and worried about how I felt about what I was doing, not worrying about every other person and how they might have thought I'm doing. And back to your point earlier, Mike, of most people don't even care anyway, because they're too busy worrying about how they're doing and how they're being perceived. So it was an interesting sort of time and relatively productive for me in that I was just more focused. I knew I had a few months to get some things done and really dug into the important stuff and was able to, not spend time on the less important things.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, Greg, just that I noticed even when I went to part-time, when I shifted to 80%, I all of a sudden did the same thing in the sense of I was better at letting go of a lot of the superfluous things that I used to spend time on that just weren't priorities. I had to be much more selective in how I spent my time. And something about knowing that this relationship of sorts was ending in, 6 months made me spend my time more effectively on the things that I felt like mattered in the next 6 months and to set things up for success when I'm gone.
So we talked about 6 months ago or 2 years ago or whenever the hell you guys gave notice, and then the transitionary period up to now. But I'm curious, for the people that you told initially, was the reaction different last week than it was when you first told them?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm happy to get into what people's reactions were, but no, they weren't I don't think they were different. They were more like what we said already, which is they were more final. Like people had brief words to say when I gave them a heads up that it's happening in months.
Mm-hmm.
But now that it's like a week, they're sending me I'm getting a lot of goodbye notes that are more colorful and flavorful. I can't think of the right adjective.
You get a lot of colorful language in your goodbye notes, Maggie.
But you know what I mean? Like a lot of thoughts, a lot of nice words are being shared with me from people. And they didn't say that before because they weren't trying to say goodbye to me. Right. And so there is this, back to like the amount of notice, right? If I had just given 2 weeks notice and, was getting a response from people, they would have said that note right away versus a lot of people were like, oh, thanks for giving me a heads up. Cool. You're going to still be here for another few months. Right. And I think we actually both sent out our goodbye emails yesterday. And I will say I'm getting a ton of, you may not be, Greg, but like I'm getting a ton of responses from people who hadn't heard. And I thought, I didn't tell everyone. I work at a very large company with, and I've worked with teams all over the world, but I'm actually surprised. I'm like, I think I thought I had done a better job personally telling people, because I really made it a point to personally tell people, but I missed a lot of people. And I never sent out like a mass email giving people a heads up until my goodbye note. And that mass email got a lot of like, oh, I had no idea. I hadn't even heard replies. And so from those people, I got all the thoughts back at once. Mm-hmm. One that I want to read to you because it was so funny.
Okay.
That I can read later. But anyways, that's just a bit about kind of the
You don't remember the question, do you? Greg, do you remember the question?
The delay.
Yeah, you asked if the reaction of those initial people we told is different now. And I think, Maggie's initial response was pretty right on, in that it hasn't substantially changed. I do think, though, that like the initial response was, oh, that's great. But it seemed so far off to everyone that it was a different response than, when it gets closer, you're obviously going to get the more kind of final, thanks for everything you've done response. But no, I would say that everyone's been pretty consistent in, wishing me the best and, being excited and supportive. And, I'd say no major changes, just a little more urgency, obviously, around, oh, wow, this is actually here. And, we've got to figure out who to transition stuff to. But the same spirit, I think.
Just to touch on the types of responses we've gotten from people. And I think Greg and I have kind of compared notes a lot. And so I think it's pretty similar. But it's a lot of like, super happy for you. I'm jealous. I hear the word jealous a lot. And also like how I'm going to go listen to your podcast. Like a lot of genuine curiosity of like, how is this possible? I never even thought of it, and I'm curious to learn more. And just genuine happiness. I will say, I think there's some people who it just doesn't make sense to them also. And they're just giving kind of a polite nod. But a lot of the people that I'm like closer to totally get it. They knew this was something that was kind of on my radar. And
was the podcast a giveaway?
Yeah, podcast was a giveaway, particularly if they listen to the podcast. But it was a lot of like genuine responses of like, I'm happy for you. I'm jealous. Good luck. Godspeed. Those sorts of responses. Yours were similar.
Yeah. No, it's funny you say Godspeed. I actually had an email that was the response, was Godspeed.
Those were actually, that was in a couple responses I got. And then today, so I'm not going to name this person, but I really like this person in case they're listening. This person works in another country and had not heard of this, I guess. Congratulations on this move. I've never replied to buy emails from our company's name, folks. But this one, I envy. How are you going to pull it off? Normally, it's mom or dad who does an early retirement, and the other parent has to continue to work just to be able to exist. But the both of you, in all caps, ? Are you children of billionaires? I just thought it was a funny response. I think he was being like kind of sarcastic, but also serious, perhaps, on how are the both of you affording this? And on that note, I also get a lot of questions. Here's one thing that's a fascinating observation. And I don't know if we've talked about this, Greg, but a lot of questions, including at last night's work happy hour, which you were at, Mike. where people were saying, so what are you going to do next? And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm not saying I'll never do anything, but I don't know if you understand like the concept of retirement. They're asking like work-wise, what am I going to do next? They're not asking like, I'm like, well, I'm going to go, plant some lemon balm in my front yard. I'm going to like go on vacation. I'm like going to do some fun stuff and hang out with my kids. And they're like, no, like work-wise, like, what are you going to do next? Like, they don't believe, I think they think we're taking a sabbatical or that we're just taking some time off to hang out with our kids, which we are, right? I mean, we're taking a forever one, right? And I'm not saying we won't someday decide to do something again, but I just think it's interesting that people don't actually understand the concept of fire. Mm-hmm. And the fact, like I said to someone last night, I was like, are you clear that this was someone I knew well enough to say it to this way, but I was like,
are you an idiot?
I was like, no, the point of this is I was like, I don't need to work it. We've saved enough money for our lifestyle is low, is inexpensive, right? We've simplified our lifestyle. We've paid off our mortgage and we've pre-saved enough money for the rest of our lives. And that is a concept that I don't think most people understand, right? And that person's email that I was just reading sort of reminded me of it, because I think, again, in the spirit of kind of what he was saying, I think people it's an unfathomable concept to save that much money and live that far below your means. And I don't think people get it. I think they think we might have a year or two saved up and then we'll go back to work.
Yeah.
The one thing I'll add to that is I've gotten similar kinds of comments from some people. Sometimes it's about money, but I think some of it is just people thinking, well, clearly you have something in you that's going to make you want to return at some point. And I don't know that they always think it's money that's going to drive that, or if they just think like, you've been this kind of driven, careerish kind of person, and you will get bored and you will want to, you'll be back in some form or fashion. So I don't know if it's all about people thinking there's not enough money saved, or if it's just thinking like, your ambition will at some point return and you'll find something, which, I mean, I don't want to cross out that possibility myself. I don't want to do that. I don't have plans to do it, but I mean, who knows, after a true reset and a few years off, I mean, I hope that I have all kinds of creative energy that's been sort of squashed over 20 years of working day in and day out, that, maybe we will do something. And I don't think it'll ever be for a, big company, but I do hope that we'll one day wake up and say like,
it would make me happy to do this.
Yeah.
But yeah, Greg, your point is spot on of that has been just a consistent response to both of us.
So I would like somewhat brief answers on this, if you can. I am interested in
I feel like that's directed towards me, but keep going.
I mean, that's where my eye contact was. Greg does not have this problem, but yes. I am interested in the highlight and the low light of your last week.
I'm gonna be brief, and you're gonna be so proud of me. My highlight was, by the way, if you ever want to go first, Greg, you just lean in, lean in.
But you leaned in first and started talking.
I feel like we've been in a pattern where I go, ladies first, but I was just letting you know you can go first. My highlight has been the very nice words and sentiments that have been expressed to me, about me and to me, from a lot of people that I really like and care for. And, it's like when, you don't always like share your feelings and emotions and compliments with people day to day until something's happening. Like you find out they're sick or they're leaving or, something like that. And so it's created a lot of nice moments with people that I really like and care for. So that's been my highlight. My low light has been dealing with 15 years worth of files and how to transition them and organize them. And that doesn't stress out some people, but I'm kind of OCD and I can't leave things in a disorganized way. And so it's been a heavier lift than I realized to kind of get all that cleaned up. And it's just super tedious. And I've been procrastinating on it for 9 months. What you got, Greg?
It's a little bit of a tough question because I've still been remote really since COVID, go into meetings occasionally, but have not had this last week has not honestly felt that much different than any other week because, you dial into some meetings and you don't have those hallway conversations that I think tend to be those meaningful kind of goodbye interactions. So it's been like many other weeks, I guess. I guess if I was to say though of that, probably the highlight is, just the conversations I have been really nice, and it's been nice to just get some goodbyes and some communication from people. I've got a work happy hour next week that I'm really looking forward to. So I think that will be my highlight, is just kind of getting to say some goodbyes in person to people, many of whom I haven't seen in person in a while. So that I think will be the highlight. And I think the low light maybe is just the fact that I've not been able to have those face-to-face conversations. I went into the office on Wednesday of last week and there was no one there. And it was kind of like that was kind of disappointing. I mean, at no fault of anyone's, but that's probably been maybe the disappointing part, is just that in this virtual work world, it's harder to have those goodbyes and feel that sense of like, oh, this is it. It's just sort of felt like kind of
it's a weirder way to get closure. And you're right. I've had some days in the office, and we had my happy hour last night. Greg's got delayed because of COVID. And so you still not had that in-person like closure in some way, which is interesting. Because it is like, this is like saying goodbye to a relationship. I keep equating it to that. It is a relationship that you have been in since college. So for 20 years, I've been in this particular relationship for 15 years. It's the longest relationship either one of us has ever had, actually. So yeah, trying to say goodbye remote when you sort of haphazardly see people in calls or, via text is a lot different than like having some quality time with people.
Yeah, that's well said.
Okay, so you've taken us on the journey from when you first announced you were leaving, and you had your last week, and you guys are done. You're retired. So I'm interested, since there's no going back, was there a point where you thought you were making a mistake in the past few weeks? And can you provide a little context around that?
A mistake in leaving?
Yeah.
No, not a single point. If anything, there were more reaffirming points around me that this is the right path for me.
So what would those be?
Some bureaucracy on things that were more difficult than they needed to be at work, and just reminders of some of the things that I will not miss. And just like stuff like that. I will say the one thing that really gave me a moment of pause is I have been back in the office some, and there was a particular day last week, or no, the week before. I don't know. I've been going in like every Wednesday for the past couple months. And so it was a Wednesday. That's all I could tell you, is where I was having a really good time with my coworkers, and like we were cutting up and we were just like making a lot of jokes, and we were having a good time. We were dealing with some work stuff too, but we were just having a good time, like with the interactions, and I was efficient, and it was nice being there in person and working on certain things and just having fun. And I was like, and I turned to them at one point and I was like, I'm going to miss this, you guys. Like, I'm not going to get this level of socialization and other things at home. No offense, Greg. We're going to have a great time with the two of us. But it's just different. And I was appreciating that moment and recognizing that. And I will say what a lot of people tell me I'm going to miss is like a sense of accomplishment. And Greg and I have talked about this a lot lately. I got a sense of accomplishment this morning when I watched a YouTube video and learned how to propagate my lemon balm to spread it into some other places in my yard, and then went and did it. I felt really good from that. And so I know, I mean, I've always been like a highly driven person, but I hope that I can shift some of my sense of feelings around like a sense of accomplishment and a job well done to some other types of activities and feel just as satisfied from them.
Yeah. If I might jump in with my own thoughts about this topic, because Maggie, you touched on something that everybody feels, and I think prevents a lot of people from even considering that there is an opportunity to retire and leave work and do something else. And what I think people don't understand fully is that there are a lot of great aspects of work. The feeling of accomplishment, as you mentioned, the socialization, free food or benefits or that sort of stuff. But if you look at the amount of time and stress that you have to commit to this job, and then look at the percentage of that time, that is those things that you really like, it is one, very small, and two, also something that you can go find somewhere else. So the number of minutes that you were like in your flow state socializing with your coworkers was probably like 20 minutes over the course of an entire week. But you had to like go sign in and go to the office and get dressed and put up with a whole bunch of bullshit for that entire time period to get that 20 minutes. And by the way, you can go see those people again when you are not working, and you'll make other friends and you will like lean into other relationships. And so I think that all the things that you miss, like the feeling of accomplishment, you will be able to replace, and I think replace in a greater percentage of your time than you could at work. So I'm very excited to have this conversation in 6 months and see how it's going.
Yeah, me too.
I'll add to that kind of question real quickly. I think I agree with Maggie that I've had no points where I've kind of said, are we doing the right thing? Certainly moments of fear or anxiety, namely at like 3 a.m. over the past couple of weeks. There's been a lot of mornings or midnight, early mornings where I've woken up and started to have fears of, amount saved in the market and just all of the, things that are going on in the world right now. But even when I've had those, they've been just that. They've been fear, which I think is normal, but not enough that's made me second guess what we're doing. And I think things that I could also say, what better time to start really focusing on what matters than when there is so much insecurity in the world. What if my worst case fears did come true? There's a war that becomes just terrible financial insecurity. I think I will have been glad that I've been able to focus on my family before that happens. And I think to Maggie's point too of like things that reaffirm it, I think there's been a few of those for me too. One was we went on spring break with our parents and our kids, and for me, vacations have always been they're great, but I'm always thinking about work and it's hanging over me. And this was the first time I went on vacation and didn't feel that work pressure since college. I was present and I enjoyed it. And I was not constantly going, oh, but work's coming up and what am I going to do about this? And it was incredible. The feeling of, wow, this is what life is like when you're not constantly thinking about work and worried about it. And that was really nice. And then also going to Camp FI was a really cool thing too, where I think, even at work, as supportive of people as people have been, most of them are supportive, but you still feel like for me, almost like you're doing something wrong because you're breaking the mold. You're doing something so different that it almost feels kind of wrong. And to go be around a community of people that are all striving for the same thing or having already done the same thing and giving their perspective a year out was extremely reaffirming and really great. And you just felt like, oh, okay, I'm not doing something wrong. Maybe it's different, but it's not the wrong thing. And that was great. Very reassuring.
Yeah. There's other people who have forged this path and are happy on the other side and happier and are, yes, it was very reassuring and great time. And we were like pretty stressed because that trip was right after we were back from spring break and it wasn't great timing in our personal lives. But at one point I was like, I really do think, and someone else mentioned this too. It might've been Diana from Economy, but just that actually this might be the best time to go. And they were right, because it was a really good sort of milestone on our journey to get that affirmation when we were in the middle of all those feelings.
Well, I am extremely proud of both of you and very excited for to see how the rest of your lives shape up. This is a thrilling time. All right, so you're now officially retired. How does it feel?
Well, we're sort of officially retired.
No, you're officially retired. Let's hear it. How do you feel?
We both, it doesn't feel real. Things have been really busy. I don't even know whether to call it formal or informal. Our last day, last Friday, and today's Thursday. But we also both had some transition items we had to finish up. And we're still getting compensated for doing it, right? And so we still had some like lingering loose ends this week. So it doesn't feel fully real from that angle. It's also, we've both been super busy with just a bunch of stuff going on, like kids' schools. I mean, there's been like some sort of end of year related activity at like every kid's school every day this week. And things that we're volunteering for. And it's a busy time personally in our lives. And so we've not yet felt as much like free time, but I felt tiny doses of it. So it feels good. It just doesn't feel quite real yet. And it's not yet, I've not yet had a day where I have like nothing to do and can like sit and read a book, which is how I was envisioning my first couple weeks. And I've not had more than like 1 hour of free time and I've used that to like work out and things I need to get done. And so it just, I mean, again, it even if I had more free time already, which I've not had, it also just doesn't feel real. So it feels like, the best way to describe it is it feels like I'm on a vacation or a staycation and that like in 2 weeks I'll go back to work. So I don't think it's going to feel real until it's been like months that we haven't been at work, or maybe when we're in Europe this summer, it'll feel more real. I don't know. How you been feeling, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, just to be brief, I'll just kind of second everything.
Brief like I wasn't brief?
No, that was not brief.
I'll just say I second everything Maggie's saying. It feels kind of surreal, busy. It's exciting, but it's also just it's hard to even process it. And I think in a few weeks, months, we'll have a much better perspective on what it all feels like and, what it means to be early retired.
Mm-hmm.
And something else, I know I wasn't brief and I'm coming back in, but
round 2, let's hear it.
I also feel, just to be very honest, a little bit emotionally numb lately. Like I'm not, couple things. Both of us are not sleeping very well, which is not helping our general state of mind. Like I don't do well when I'm not getting good sleep. And I think we both, for various, it's just, this is a big life change, right? I'm confident in it, but it doesn't mean that there's not still, all the kind of anxiety and stuff we've talked about. So I'm not sleeping well lately. And I think you're kind of in a similar situation, Greg. And I know that actually because we sleep in the same bed. And so I experience I notice when someone's up in the middle of the night because I am also. And so that's not helping because that's just me. I'm not at my best when I'm not operating off of 8 hours of sleep. I'm very fragile sleep ecosystem happening in my body. I used to always joke. And so I think that's part of it, is that like, I'm just in this sort of like frantic trying to get crap done phase right now. And I don't feel like I've allowed myself to like fully process my feelings around surrounding this change. And I think I will in the coming weeks and months as there's more distance between me and work. But it's like the distance isn't there yet because I spent half my day yesterday dealing with some transition stuff. And I've got a few more things I've got to do today that I hope to be able to finish up.
I want to share one thing, and you feel free to include this, not include it, work it in wherever it fits. But I've been thinking a lot about Maggie and kind of what I hope for her in these, few weeks before we take our kind of big summer trip, and is like for her to truly slow down and relax. And I think that's tough for Maggie. She's a constant doer. There's never a project, a person in need, something out there that Maggie won't spend her time on, which is amazing. It's what makes Maggie Maggie. But I think, if you talk about when is there a right time or a good time in life to just slow down and truly relax and just have some leisure time, I think it's maybe not the first week or first 2 weeks because there's just a lot of loose ends that need to be tied up. But I feel like it's also not 3 years into retirement when you're, by that point you've taken on social engagements and volunteering. And I worry that Maggie is going to kind of fast forward through this time and never have slowed down and truly relaxed. And so that's my wish for her, is to slow down, be bored a little bit, feel those feelings of, I want to do this, I need to do this, I need to do that, and feel them, and sort of from a mindfulness and a Buddhist perspective, feel those emotions, but not act on them. Just feel them and notice them and allow them to slowly dissipate. Because I think, there's just only so many times in life you get that opportunity. And so, that is my wish for you, Maggie. And I hope that you're able to do it. And maybe this Friends on Fire community can also, support you in that and ask you to slow down and smell the flowers for a little while.
Greg tells this to me multiple times a day in a very kind and loving way, like he just did. And he's right. And I know it because one of the things that I'd written down in my notes in thinking about how I've been feeling lately is I'm too busy to process any feelings on what's happening right now. So I've not had it's like I'm sleep deprived. I'm frantically running from thing to thing to thing. And I've already somehow got, signed up for other volunteer stuff at school in the last couple of weeks because I'm available and, in theory I'm available. And so I just it's like I'm already piling more things on and adding to what should be a more relaxing time. And he's seeing it, and he's smart and right to point it out. And yes, I need to learn how to relax. And I think I've talked about that before, that being one of my goals.
Well, we are going to meet up in Austria. And I think at that point, you'll be away from the country. Your email from work will have been turned off. I think it would be interesting to revisit this topic while we are in Europe together and hear your thoughts.
We'll do Friends on Fire from Austria.
Yeah.
I like
That'll be fun.
All right. So those are my questions. Thank you for your honesty and sharing your stories. I'm very excited for you both. Now let's pivot and talk about some listener questions, because you made a post on Instagram and you got a lot of interesting stuff that you'd like to fire through.
Yeah. Well, the first one was asking for an update on my UTIs.
Mm-hmm. It's a hot topic in the in our fan base.
Yeah, it's a burning topic is what I would.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Don't worry, folks. I'm good. No UTIs. Okay, moving on. That was actually a question submitted, by the way. I'm going to speed round these because a few of them are all the same.
Was it at least a woman that asked that question? Hopefully.
I don't know. I didn't look that far into it.
It was me.
Yeah, it was Michael K. O'Leary. I love when you send responses to my questions. Okay. A couple questions were around how are you handling, quote, retirement just as the market is in a downward spiral, and special precautions with retiring in this crazy market, presumably DCP not affected. Well, look, what is affected? Yeah, my DCP is affected because it sits in the market and I get an annual allotment that comes out of it. I don't get to choose when I take that out. You have a little more flexibility. Greg, actually, you get to choose when you take your money out of your deferred compensation plan. And so he can choose strategically. He doesn't have to tap into that money when the market's down. He can wait for it to be back up, whether that's a monthly amounts, whether that's, years from now, whatever. And so he's got some flexibility. Look, the market's down. Greg and I were discussing this morning. It is what it is. Most of our funds in the market are long-term plays. We've got, some mix of, passive income from rental properties that doesn't fully cover our cost of living. We've got, some cash. We have enough cash for, a shorter amount, a couple of years, and we will be okay, right? It doesn't feel good to have the market be down right now, but it's also just a feeling, because even if the market was up, I'm not pulling that money out in that exact moment. It just feels good that it's up.
Mm-hmm.
I keep, it's funny, this morning I said to Maggie something about, had I known the market was going to be this far down, would I have worked for even another 3 or 4 months just to, keep buying stocks when they're down? That's my thing, is not so much, my current money is down, but just that I don't have now the income to keep buying, investing more. And I think, well, it's interesting to sort of ponder that. I mean, I think the biggest thing though is still, our kids are getting older regardless of what the market's doing. This trip this summer, there's no way we could take a 6-week trip if we were still working. I mean, maybe we could have worked something out with our companies, but even if our companies said, sure, this is important, you do this. Mentally, I don't know that I could have done it. And
I'd be checking email.
And been present. Yeah. So I keep coming back to, we've got to enjoy the things that we can. And, the market is the market. It's a little scary for sure, but we've got to do what's important to us and not let that change. That's still our true north, is the fact that we want to spend time with our families and do it now.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and we'll certainly be strategic about how and when we pulling things out slowly. And I'm putting more in right now because things are so down that, we're getting a good price on stuff. Okay, another question. We had a couple questions about how do your kids feel about your retirement? How are the kids adjusting to your retirement? I'd be interested for your perspective on this too, Greg, because you hadn't seen these questions in advance. Why don't you go first, actually?
Sure. I think the kids are excited. I think they, we talk about financial stuff with them a lot. So, and obviously they've been on this podcast before, so it's not a shock to them of something they didn't expect. And I think over time we've been able to kind of impress upon them the importance of savings and, living a frugal lifestyle and spending money on the things that really matter versus the material things. So I think they're kind of there. I've funny, my 13-year-old just recently was like, what do I tell people now when they say, what does your dad do? Do I just tell them he's retired? And I was like, well, you could tell them that, and you could tell them what I did do before I retired. And it was just funny that was the kind of, it's not the big things in life. It's what do I tell friends and how do I, and it was really coming not from a place of judgment or anything. It was just very much like an earnest question of how do I express to people what you do or did? And that was kind of funny to me.
It's funny. You hadn't told me that. I don't think they fully understand what's happening. We talk about it a lot, but I don't think they fully grasped it. And I don't know why I can't say that word. And I think some of it, just like we were talking about, they won't fully appreciate it till they start to see our additional availability. But a funny little story, I was at school on Tuesday cleaning up after the final play performance, which is in the middle, like in the morning. So it's like 10:30 in the morning and the play is finished. I'm cleaning up with a couple of other parents and like taking the sets down and stuff. And Kate comes running in with no shoes on at school, which is unusual. She had her play costume and they were these pretty uncomfortable like shoes. And she was in gym and forgot to bring her running shoes. And so she's like, I was like, well, I walked here. She's like, can you run home and get my shoes and bring them back in your car? And I was like, well, I walked here first off. So I got to walk home and then bring the car back and all this stuff. And she's like, well, you got time? Like, you go get my shoes, so she's like, I think already, expecting and reaping the benefits of my availability, perhaps, which is a funny thing because I almost want to like hide my availability because protect it is a better word to Greg's point earlier. Though I did walk home and get her shoes and come back because she really had nothing to wear all day, even though I had reminded her 10 times to pack her shoes that morning. But anyways, I think the kids are excited for us. They're excited for Europe and they're excited that we're going to have more flexibility. Like they know that we can drive them to swim team practice and things that were harder for us to do because they're in the middle of the day and during the summer, I mean. And so I think they're looking forward to that. And I think soon they'll reap the benefits of us being less stressed out around them and more kind of engaged and present, which that'll be, something we can talk about in Austria.
Yeah, I will say too, I think that's, working from home for the past couple of years, we've both been pretty flexible with our time. I think the biggest difference will be just the having a little more emotional and mental bandwidth. It's not that we will have more time, but I think it's we'll have more patience, be more present, and hopefully the time with them will be better than it was when we were physically able to do stuff, but mentally still stressed out and thinking about work stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll hit a couple other questions really, really fast. A couple questions about HSA, because I think I posted a question about HSA, about transferring it. And they were saying, interested in your plans for your HSA account. Are you waiting till of age to withdraw it or using it for bills now? I don't know. I mean, I'm going to just roll it over. I've always saved in my HSA, and I've just used it as a savings account. I've never actually tapped into it for any medical expenses yet. But like we talked about in a recent episode, I am going to save all my explanation of benefits so that if and when I need to tap into that money, I can. And again, I might do it when my kids are in college. Who knows what I would do it for. But I am going to meticulously track and save all my medical expenses so that I can tap into it when I need to. And in the meantime, I'll just be rolling it over from the current company that my company uses into Fidelity, which I will figure out how to do in the coming days and weeks. Okay. Last question that I think we'll hit is, well, one question was income streams until Social Security, 401k, IRA kicks in. We talked about that in one of our episodes that was about how how a 41-year-old and 43-year-old are retiring. And so do you know that episode number?
I want to say 148.
You always make up numbers, Mike.
138.
Oh, actually, it is 138. Look at you, 138.
Yeah.
How a family of five is affording to retire at 41 and 43. So we'll put that link in the show notes.
Impressive recall there, Mike.
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, but that's only because it was like 10 episodes ago. If you ask me something that happened a year and a half ago, I'm off by 70 episodes.
Greg, sometimes he just makes up episode numbers. Also. And then I check and I'm like, that was not. Okay, someone said, forever not working, or is this a sabbatical? How did you start, etc.? I want it all. Well, I'm not going to be able to give it to you all right now, but we do have 150 episodes where you can get it all if you'd like. And like we said a couple of times, right? We have financially prepared to never work again, and we will be okay. There's probably something we will do someday, whether it's volunteer stuff, whether it's small part-time thing, but I don't think either one of us, if you had to first off, I can't predict the future. I can't predict how we'll feel and what learnings we'll have in the coming months and years, other than there'll be a lot of feelings and a lot of learnings. But I think if you were to ask both of us if we had to put money on it, I would put money on it and say, I will not ever go back to the type of jobs we just left.
I'd put money on that too.
I will not work full time, anything, anywhere for anyone. And I won't work in a high stress, high demanding corporate America type of role. I've loved it. It's been great. Not saying I wouldn't do some consulting and some kind of part-time stuff, but I won't go back into the jobs we just left. And who knows, 5 years in, we might think well, I take back what I said back then, but at this point in my life, I don't plan on going back.
Maggie, I can tell by your face you're looking for another compliment. So I will tell you once again, very proud of you too. Super excited for your future.
Are you proud of Greg too?
I'm very proud of Greg. I was proud of Greg when he first switched his cell phone plan back in 2019 or whenever it was. It's a long road, Greg.
I mean, that was the key. I mean, that was the turning point for me.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd be able to afford it if I hadn't, and it started with that, Mike thinks you spend way too much on your cell phone. Who the hell is Mike and why does he care? Why does he know that?
Why can he see my bills? I know you're half joking, Greg, but that seed, that was a big seed you planted with him of seeing the savings. And I think you got a little addicted to it after that of wait, where else could I save? And
it was a cool moment of oh, there's a million things I can do to save money that don't even affect me. It's a little time, it's a little learning, a little humility of maybe I don't know it all. And this guy, Mike, knows things I don't know. And just, it was, it certainly, inspired more of that.
Yeah. Became kind of addictive. Mike, I'll just say thank you to you real quick while we're doing compliments. We'll boomerang one back to you because, that was a compliment of the cell phone story, but just that you have been with us on this journey along the way for the past couple of years, right? You've been a huge influence. You have you answer, many of my incessant questions, probably fewer from Greg. But like you've been a helpful friend and partner along on this journey. And the whole podcasting process and the other people we've gotten to talk to and all the interviews we've done, and all of those have played a really interesting kind of incremental role on this journey to get, I think, both of us to the point where we were comfortable and had the courage to make this change in our lives. So just a thank you to you, Mike, a thank you to every person that has supported us through the podcasts and through the interviews we've had and the discussions we've had and Campfi and everyone, because this is not, it's not like I just, I'm very matter of fact, like, I've like waffled and wavered. Is it waffled? What's the word? Everybody always wants to know. Waffles? Like waffles that we eat?
I think both work.
Both work. Okay. But like, I've wavered on this and, overthought it and, for so long. And so it's not like I just am like, I'm confident in our decision now, but it's taken me a lot to get there. And I appreciate everyone who has helped on that journey and just continues to provide us some positive affirmation, because it does help.
Yeah, that's really well said. And it's true, Mike. I think had Maggie not become friends with you and, co-podcast hosts or co-hosts of this podcast, I don't know that our trajectory would have changed the way it did. I mean, we were savers but I think you helped supercharge it. And I really am grateful for that. And I think it's interesting too, and reflecting of like the emails we've gotten and people kind of saying, oh, I'm really proud of you. And, you've worked hard for this. And it's true. We have worked hard, but just like anything in life, I think it's a mix of the steps you take, but also the people around you and the circumstances. And I feel less like, oh, I've worked so hard, and more like I feel very fortunate. I feel fortunate to have been influenced by Maggie and Mike, you, and the broader community, and just fortunate to be in a position that we are. And it is such a mix of things that we've done to implement stuff, but just being so lucky to have crossed paths with people that had this knowledge and this perspective that really helped change our trajectory.
Very well said, Greg.
Thanks.
Good job, Greg.
Glad we brought you on the show this time, Greg. All right. So we will close this out. It's been a fun conversation. If you've been challenged or inspired by what you've heard, please rate and review the show. You can also subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. If you have any thoughts or questions, we'd love to hear from you. And feel free to send Maggie some more questions about how retirement's going. We will answer them, definitely. You can leave us a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370 or hit us up on Instagram.
And don't forget to reach out to Maggie and make sure she is relaxing.
Yes, please do. All right. Thanks, Maggie. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye.
Thanks, Greg. Bye.